So it's 1 a.m. You know, I always have to rearrange the time in there because it's always has been California time. Actually, the last video is going to show it later than this. I'm going to have to go in there and annotate and put in the correct time. But going through cults, I think, or just because I'm going to have to make a series on defending the Catholic Church, and it sucks because I don't want to. I'd rather go into. I had a whole series on the other channel about how what's the difference between the Orthodox and the Catholic, and it was I don't know how many parts there was. I think I had like 6 of them, but the Catholic Church is basically the worst of the worst to, I don't know, I guess you'd call them the Fundamentalist Atheists. And I'm not talking about actual atheists. It's actually kind of funny, the word fundamentalist, I said, when I was going to the Islamic Foundation, I said, well, you know, we're not fundamentalists or anything. And they said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, crazy fundamentalists. They said, of course. So that's a good thing. It's a good, like, obeying the fundamental principles of Islam is a good thing, and you know, trying to blend it with secularism or Christianity or democracy, that's bad. And I thought, yeah, you know what, that's right. Actually, that's why would people not? If you say you're not a fundamentalist, that's something that just means, okay, you really don't like it, or you're just using it for some reason. So you should be a fundamentalist, whatever. No, that's not. Much later on, I would say no, that's not right. And especially the way fundamentalism is used, the word applied to things like fundamentalist Christian. So fundamentalist atheist, because I've heard the term used, Fundie Atheist or Fundamentalist Atheist, and it actually does apply. It's not a junk term, because I said in the preceding video, I mentioned atheists who would just go to irrational lengths to try to argue with people, or they couldn't follow a logical line of argument. Usually they will portray, and it's really weird, a lot of them are left-leaning for some reason, which I would think you would embrace, like Ayn Rand, objectivism, that kind of stuff. Oh, Ayn Rand is for the Republicans, which I don't understand. I always thought that was kind of backwards, which it actually is, because most of the Republicans, most Republican people are Democrats. I think most Orthodox are Democrats for the most part. The only thing they'd be against the death penalty and against, and be very pro-life, but not so much into the legal aspects of course, partial birth abortion. They want to outlaw it. That's something I actually should get into, because I don't know much about the different state laws of the legal rights of the fetus or something. It's never been something that I've gotten into. But I should just, you know, find out something on it. But it seems that there are people on YouTube who portray themselves as atheists, and that gives them a badge. They have a they're part of a special club, which you're basing something on a negative. And they will go to great lengths to say, well, Islam and Christianity are basically, they're just the same. Even though one has war, because people say jihad, oh, it just means struggle. The word, yeah, but when you're saying, like, we have to go fight them, we have to go combat them, it's more like combat. You can combat AIDS, or you can be in combat against the Viet Cong. You know, it's, you know, you can combat illiteracy, or you can be a combatant against, you know, the Nazis. You can use the word for different purposes. Even without even using the word jihad, you can look at the commands of Muhammad of go and kill the enemy. And the enemy is any non-Muslim. And like in Christianity, you have the Old Testament, which appears before Christianity, which is the Septuagint. The modern West has adapted a form of Masoretic Tanakh or something like that, something very, and they did it for weird reasons. But the Christianity was founded by the person of Jesus Christ and spread by not only his apostles but also his disciples. People always, oh, the 12 apostles, which countries? It didn't matter which countries they went to because there were other people spreading it. You didn't have to be. I don't even think it mentions 12 apostles in John, actually. And I think it gives different names for some of them. But you have this message of you know, basically peace. God has come to earth. You know, the kingdom is here. The kingdom is at hand. Repent of your sins, turn around, you know, and die for what you believe in. You know, you live a good life. I mean, the core tenets of Christianity you can see, and you can see not. I mean, in the New Testament, there may be. I don't even know if there's any imagery, because even when Paul is talking about Christianity, it's not even like, you know, he doesn't even use the imagery of fighting wars. He uses the imagery of running a race and like an athlete. Now they talk about the armor of God and love and compassion and all these things, and, you know, meekness and stuff like that. In the New Testament, if you take the Gospels, if you just take the basic New Testament that people have, New Testament plus the Apocalypse, which the Apocalypse says right out of the, this is a story, this is a book of signs and symbols. Which is why when people get all jacked up on it, oh, the exact thing, it's just loony. And that's one good thing the Catholic Church but I'll deal with a Catholic view, because that's what most people are used to. In Islam begins with Muhammad, and all the writings in the Quran are said to come from Muhammad, even though we know that some of them were from Umar and Abu Bakr. We have the hadith that say that. So it's not like, okay, you have this old part tacked on that is just giving context to it, or just, you know, just to show, which is what the Old Testament is to the New Testament. You know, saying, okay, see, God was working through all mankind, and Christianity also believes that God is working through all of the ancient pagan cultures. But God revealed to himself in the Galilee in the 1st century. The person of the Logos revealed himself. So you have the Old Testament, which is just, it has stories about wars, and there's the God of the Old Testament commanding people to go to war, but there's no command, and you shall fight them wherever you find them, and, you know, basically start a worldwide thing. I mean, even all the horrible bloodshed of the Old Testament that's just despicable. The parts of Joshua, I say, what, that's coming out of the mouth of God? What the hell is wrong with that? You know, like, who the hell wrote this? It's confined to basically history. This is the conquest of Judea, and this will be, you know, the Israelites, and then God takes it away from them, which is why I don't agree with Zionism, because the Jews never believed in Zionism until nationalism came about and fascism came about, and then they said, oh, well, we got our own land and we should be over there. That's why I don't agree with, well, it wasn't a part of Judaism. They believed God had taken the land back. No, these people are not going to be here. Not to mention they could have just moved there in the first place if they wanted to. After, I don't know, what, 2,000 years or 1,800 years of being away. But it seems that the irrational atheists, the fundamentalist atheists on YouTube like to take something like the Catholic Church with all its flawed history and some of its teachings that I just despise, can't stand and think, what the hell's wrong with that, you know, and really screwed up teachings that I believe had got injected in there. And they compare it with Islam. Say, oh, it's the same. It's just as violent. It's just as this. It's just as that. Or the cults. And it gets to a degree where you're like, this person either can't be intelligent or is not honest. And I have to reiterate this. Just because you state you do not believe in a God, or just that, not even or, you do not believe in a God, that does not automatically equip you with, I am therefore better at critical thinking, know more about history and science, and more pro-science than any person who claims otherwise for their own personal belief. And on YouTube, the hysteria of what is fundamentalist atheism is crazy. And we see that the main proponents of this, what can be called fundamentalist atheism, come from the fundamentalist Christians. They were I mean, Kelly O'Connor, go through the list, Brian Fleming, these were very fundamentalist Christians, and all they did was drop their God. They're still evangelizing, they still have the outlook, except it's against that. It's it's a weird form of self-hatred. And when people talk about Islam, like, oh, well, Christianity can be just as violent. Not based in any of its texts, it can't. You can't pick up the New Testament and say, okay, I have to go to, I mean, you pick up the New Testament, you can't, I mean, if you were to take it hard line seriously, you couldn't even defend a family member if they were being murdered. You wouldn't, you know, you would be the oppressed and the kicked out, and trampled down. At the core roots of Islam is bloodshed and conquest. First 100 years of Islam was spread by the sword. They weren't liberating, oh, the Orthodox Christians or the Catholics were so oppressive. There were no Muslims who were they liberating? They were liberating the Christians from themselves. It's like if the communists invaded America and there was a big bloodshed, oh, we've liberated America from themselves. We've liberated them from capitalism and democracy and free speech. It's just like that. If you actually look at the history of Islam, look at the history of Christianity, look at the history of Islam. And people want to talk about wars that happened over 1,000 years after the death of the man known as Jesus. But yet, and try to blame that on, oh, well, see, Christ's teaching or Paul, this is what happened, this is how this started the Crusades, or stuff in Nazi Germany, which is like 1,700 years after the fact, after these things were written. But at Islam, you see Muhammad actually going out, cutting off people's heads, killing them, slaughtering them, and you see his successors act just like he did. Muhammad, Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali. And you look at the Sahaba. The one person I never liked, even in Islam, the one thing I had a real problem with was, what is this? Oh, it's a cut sound. I forget. I'm going to remember it as soon as I run out of time, which is in 30 seconds. But people really need to seriously take a look at how Islam was founded, and not just like the nice shiny parts. I mean, if you're looking at any religion, thoroughly look at both sides. Go around, kick the tires. It's what brought me to Orthodoxy, because Protestant Christianity doesn't stand up. It collapses under its own weight, because wait, how did you get this book? And then you have to go back to the original. But I've run out of time. Obeying the fundamental principles of Islam is a good thing, and you know, trying to blend it with secularism or Christianity or democracy, that's bad. And I thought, yeah, you know what, that's right. Actually, that's why would people not? If you say you're not a fundamentalist, that's something that just means, okay, you really don't like it, or you're just using it for some reason. So you should be a fundamentalist, whatever. No, that's not. Much later on, I would say, no, that's not right. And especially the way fundamentalism is used, the word applied to things like fundamentalist Christian. So fundamentalist atheist means, because I've heard the term used, Fundie Atheist or Fundamentalist Atheist, and it actually does apply. It's not a junk term, because I said in the preceding video, I mentioned atheists who would just So it's 1 a.m. You know, I always have to rearrange the time in here because it's always has been California time. Actually, the last video is going to show it later than this. I'm going to have to go in there and annotate and put in the correct time. But going through cults, I think, or the Catholic Church is basically the worst of the worst to, I don't know, I guess you'd call them the fundamentalist atheists. And I'm not talking about actual atheists. It's actually kind of funny, the word fundamentalist, I said, when I was going to Islamic Foundation, I said, well, you know, we're not fundamentalists or anything. And they said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, crazy fundamentalists. They said, of course. So that's a good thing. It's a good, like, just, I guess I'm going to have to make a series on defending the Catholic Church. And it sucks because I don't want to. I'd rather go into, I had a whole series on the other channel about how, what's the difference between the Orthodox and the Catholic, and it was, I don't know how many parts there was. I think I had like 6 of them. But,